Hey guys, Jeremiah here, trapping today. I am making under ice beaver snares, so I thought I'd show you a little bit of the process. I may have recorded something like this in the past. If I have, sorry, but I'm going to do it again. So I thought I'd just run you through it. I've been making a stack of them here. This is kind of my preferred method that I've worked out over the last couple of years, and it doesn't mean it's the best under ice beaver snare setup, but it's what I do and it works. So I've got 42 inches of 5/64 7x7 cable. I like this diameter. It's fine enough, it's small enough that it doesn't tend to get seen by beavers, and it's nice and flexible, and it comes down in a loop nicely. It's not too stiff, but it's also not too wobbly. It's stiff enough for the job it needs to do. So the 16th inch cable is popular in some parts. A lot of people use it up here. I don't like it. I feel like it is just a little bit too small. It bends up a lot. The snares tend to fire a lot when you're trying to put the snare through the ice. So 5/64 seems to be a pretty good compromise, and it's also pretty strong. If this thing gets kinked up a little bit, it's not going to break very easily. So then what I make is an adjustable loop on the outside. So I have a 5/64 ferrule here, and I run the wire in one side and out the other. And you can just cramp this down. A lot of snare makers do that. They make the loop the size they want, they cramp it down, and then you can wrap wire around this and around your snare pole and mount the snare that way. That works very well. I just like to have the added luxury of being able to adjust the size of my loop, and so I just add an aluminum stop on the end of this, and what that does is it allows me to slide my loop, make it larger, make it smaller. The wire can move freely through both ends of that loop until it hits the stop. And what that does is that allows me to wrap this snare wire over and around the pole that I'm snaring on. Usually that's my bait pole, and then I can cinch it down till it gets tight, and it's right there, and then I can hang the snare from the top of the wire. So the second thing I do is put in my snare bracket. You can use a couple different things. I go back and forth between a little piece of vinyl PVC hose. It's just like a water line or fuel line type of hose, and this is I believe this is a 1/4 inch inside diameter, and I just run that on the wire. You can also use a 3/32 double ferrule. So the 3/32 will slide nicely and allow you to put like a 14 gauge wire in through this. But this is just very simply a way to slide the hanging wire or your support wire through this little piece of hose, and then you can use that to mount your snare and adjust where it's going to be. Then you got your lock. I got a 5/64 cam lock here. Always run the end of your snare cable on so it's kind of climbing this ridge of the lock. So you make sure you got it the right direction so it tightens the right way. Run the end back through the other end of the cam lock, and then you got the buttons, aluminum stop on the end. Crimp that down just like that, and then finally the last thing we got to do is make sure we want that to hang nicely, and right now it's not hanging very nicely, so we want to put a kink in this. We want to bend this button end at approximately a 90-degree angle. So I'm just kind of pushing that back into itself to bend it. We get almost a 90-degree angle there, and that allows our snare to hang relatively straight. So in the end, we have a nice snare that, for the size of poles that I use, that 42 inches seems to get the loop size just about right. I want the loop size to be somewhere around the size of my hand, my opened up hand. That seems to be a pretty good size. That does, it gets the beaver behind the head and the arms. You can make your loops like this. I've seen people snare with a loop size like this. You will get nice neck catches with that loop size. The issue with that is there's more area around the snare for the beaver to miss. So this way, bigger loop, I tend to catch them more, but there's a less likelihood that they're going to either go around the snare, and it's still not big enough that they're going to go through without getting caught. Their body is going to be wide enough to avoid that problem. So even with this loop size, I get a lot of neck catches as well. So lately, I have not been loading these snares, and I've been experimenting loading and not loading them. I have not been convinced yet that for under ice beaver trapping, that is necessary to load snares. In fact, maybe the opposite. I think in some cases loading the snare may actually make it a little too eager to fire, and then when you try to just push your snares through the ice, and as they go through the layer of ice, if they're just rubbing up against the side of the ice, and then as soon as they pop through, you can't see them anymore. A lot of times, if they're loaded too much or they're too ready to fire, the snares will fire, and the snare will be right down to where it's not. You may push this through the ice, you get it down there, the snare fires, and then your snare's hanging down like that, and you're not trapping. So I like this. This has worked very well for me, and I've actually, since I've been not loading snares, it may be coincidence, and since I've been going with this cable setup with that size of loop and the bait poles the way I'm doing them, I've had almost no misses. But I still have a lot more to catch and to learn and kind of determine where I'm at with that. But that's basically my snare setup right now in a nutshell. I will just run it back through for you again. 42 inches of 5/64 7x7 cable. Run it through a 5/64 aluminum double ferrule, a 5/64 aluminum stop, makes your adjustable loop, somewhere about an inch long piece of PVC vinyl tubing. This is a 1/4 inch outside diameter, but you can use a variety of sizes. You can also use a 3/32 double ferrule. The cost is just the same for both of them as far as what I've priced out, so it doesn't really make a big difference, and they both work the same. Got the cam lock. You can use the black cam locks. I've got some here. Those are usually used for land trapping. I don't have any issues with problems with cam locks under ice beaver trapping. Some people say if they have like pike in the area they trap, sometimes the pike might hit that shiny thing underwater and cause the snare to fire. I have not had any issues with that under ice. Then finally, back through your cam lock. Also, some people will use a double ferrule on this end just to add a little more weight to get the snare going when it fires. It doesn't seem to me to be that necessary, but some people do like to do it that way. I may try it eventually. Then kink this to a 45-degree angle. There you go. There's your snare. Set it out, get to beaver trapping under ice.